This Equipment World video is brought to you by Chevron Delo 600 ADF Ultra Low Ash Diesel Engine Oil. It's time to kick some ash. Hi everyone, welcome back to Equipment World. You're watching The Dirt. I'm your host Brian, and today I don't have answers, I have questions. I know this is kind of getting outside of our normal scope of the way these shows go, but I legitimately have questions on this one. And what do I have questions about? It's the no-call, no-show. We all know what the no-call, no-show is. We're all familiar with it. We've all dealt with it through our entire careers. It's when you have an employee who just flat out doesn't show up to work and gives you no phone call, no heads up as to why they didn't show up, and also when you can expect them back. These have been around for a long time. It's nothing new. But I feel like up until this point, the no-call, no-show has generally been reserved for those employees who we all kind of already suspected we were going to have some issues with. They weren't the most reliable employees, and so it really wasn't that big of a surprise when you got a no-call, no-show situation with that employee. But what's really got me perplexed in this situation is that the no-call, no-show is kind of becoming a common policy for the way especially the younger generations handle not wanting to come to work that day. And I think it goes above and beyond just not being courteous. I really feel like because of the extent of the issue, and let's be honest, this isn't just reserved for the skilled trades. This is across the board. The younger generations seem to be adopting this mentality of the no call, no show being an acceptable way to not come into work. And the fact that it is such a widespread issue really makes me think this is more of this generational gap and this communication issue that we've been having, that we've been discussing on the channel. And so I guess what I'm asking is, what are your thoughts and opinions on why we're having so many issues with no-call, no-shows these days? But before we get into that, I want to take a second to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Chevron Lubricants. Protecting your diesel engine and its exhaust after-treatment system has traditionally been seen as an either-or proposition when it comes to choosing the engine oil that's going to protect your system. And that's exactly why Chevron spent more than a decade of R&D work developing a no-compromise formulation. Now, I don't have to tell you why a clogged DPF is bad news, but here's the real kick in the pants. 90% of that ash clogging up your DPF and then upping your fuel and maintenance costs, it comes from your engine oil. You might be thinking, why don't they make an engine oil with less ash in it then? You'll be happy to learn that Chevron agrees with you. They've developed a new ultra-low ash diesel engine oil that is specifically designed to combat DPF ash clogging. Delo 600 ADF with OmniMax technology cuts sulfate ash by 60%, radically reducing the rate of DPF clogging and extending the DPF service life by 2.5 times. Before you had to choose between protecting your engine or your after-treatment system. Now you don't. Delo 600 ADF with OmniMax technology. It's time to kick some ash. The reason I'm thinking about this, as you guys may or may not know, I actually operate part-time. I help a friend of mine. He's got a company, and when he needs an additional operator, he'll give me a call and I go out and help him on the job. And over the recent years, we've really been experiencing a lot more no-call, no-shows, and like I said, particularly with the younger generations. And this past week, it just really got me thinking about what could be the cause behind this issue. And I don't know. I legitimately don't know. I have some theories. In fact, this last week, I've spent a lot of time thinking about some potential theories as to why. I think part of it has to do with the fact that this generation coming up right now, kids that are within, 25 and under, this is really the first generation that grew up that immediately jumped on the internet as soon as they could. They immediately jumped on instant messengers as soon as they could. They had a phone with text messaging as soon as they could. They had social media as soon as they could. And so they've had this unique ability to pick up a communication device and communicate as long as they felt they wanted to, and then they would put down the communication device and then they were done communicating. And our generation, the older generations, I guess, have never really thought about communication in that way before, that you can just shut it off when you're done talking. And so I do wonder if this isn't just the new generation, it's not the new generation being worthless. And we've talked about that on this channel before, that there is a disconnect between the older generation and the younger generation. I don't want to make excuses for the younger generation, but I do feel like this is more of a lack of clear expectations presented by the older generation on how the younger generation should handle jobs. And that, there's another theory right there. How much education have we given this newest generation on what expected business practices are? How do you conduct and handle yourself as an employee? Because as we all know, you don't get classes like business education in high school anymore. You don't get any of these skill sets that we were raised up learning in high school. Instead, it's all about standardized testing and focused on moving these kids into a college setting. And so I feel like a lot of these kids may not have ever gotten the discussion of how you handle yourself as an employee. Again, I don't want to make excuses here, but I am struggling to wrap my mind around why this is such a commonplace issue. It's no longer that you just have a couple of these disrespectful kids that come out and they don't know how to handle themselves on the job. It's really become this widespread issue that's plaguing all of the industries. It's not just the white collar industry. It's not just the blue collar industry. It's not just the trades. It's everyone is dealing with this issue. And so while I don't have any answers on this particular subject as far as the root cause, what I do have is a suggestion for you to kind of establish some clear expectations and clear guidelines. Have a conversation with your new employees on what is expected of them when it comes to showing up for work. Have a no-call, no-show policy and make that clear. And it doesn't have to be a loaded conversation where you come into it with an attitude. It can just be a part of your regular employee intake program that you already have in place. Just add a conversation that says, by the way, we do have a no-call, no-show policy. If you don't show up for work and we don't hear any communication from you, unless there is an emergency, an extenuating circumstance that is deemed acceptable, you will be terminated or you will be reprimanded or whatever your company's policy is, make that clear. And that way you've established a clear expectation. Because like we've talked about in previous videos, because you have this generational gap between people who have been in the trades and this youngest generation who is just now experiencing the trades and getting exposure to the trades, I do think part of what plays into it, and again, not an excuse, but part of what plays into it is there has never been any clear expectations set. So you can at least handle your side of the equation, because at the end of the day, we can't control what our employees do. We can only react, and we can try to better inform and better communicate. And that would be my recommendation to you as an employer, as about the only plan of action that you can take going forward is try to communicate clearly that it is not acceptable to have a no-show, no-call, no-show, whichever way we want to say it here. That's not an acceptable way to handle yourself on the job. Set that expectation. Let them know there will be a consequence for that, and hopefully you don't have to deal with that issue as much in the future. And I say as much because we all know we're going to have to deal with no-call, no-shows. But hopefully we can mitigate it a little bit. So I hope this has been at least somewhat helpful. Like I said, this is really meant to be a discussion. I do want your input, especially if you're one of the younger generation and you have some insight that maybe you can give to all of us old guys. Let us know kind of what's fueling this. It's very interesting to me. So thanks for watching. Thanks for following along, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode of The Dirt.